Greetings, family. This is Dr. Timothy Farmer, your technoevangelist, and I am here to answer several technology questions. Many times on Sundays or during the week, I'll get text messages from friends, colleagues, churches I've had the opportunity to support with technology questions about how do we resolve this? How do we enhance that? And I thought it would be a great opportunity to take some of those questions that many people ask and share them because these may be questions that other ministries might have as well. Church technology questions or just questions about technology in general. What are some best practices? What are some tools and some tips to help enhance and help to make my life in ministry or my life personally more efficient? So I am here to answer several of those questions. If you have a technology question, please feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can go to farmertechgroup.com and you can submit your question. And if there's another opportunity for me to come to you in this way to answer questions, I'll be sure to, as much as possible, to answer those questions so that we can continue to be the best that we can be using technology. Now, recently, I've gotten quite a few questions about sound. Sound continues to be a topic, a hot topic of discussion as ministries are broadcasting their services online. They want to make sure that it has an optimal sound, not only for those who are online, also in person, and even for ministries that are growing, ministries that are startup ministries or church plants. How can they maximize their ministry sound for people to hear and hear the word clearly? So I've taken quite a few questions and I've compiled them together so that I can adequately answer them the best that I can and provide resources to help ministries. And again, this might not be something at the top of your radar, but there may be a question that arises that could help benefit the things that you do in your ministry. So here are a few questions that I do want to highlight. So one of the first questions that I received recently about sound is, why is sound important? Isn't it just turning a knob and cutting it on? Well, gone are the days where you can turn on a soundboard, press a button, and it just works perfectly, because much of our ministry now incorporates many elements of sound. You're not just using one mic for one singer or one mic for the pastor, but you're using multiple mics, or you have multiple musicians that need to be able to hear. So sound is critically important to ensure that everything is clear, everything is sound, and that the sound is not just heard, but also felt. Ministry is more than what we see, but it's about what we hear and how we feel what we hear. And not only is it just important just to hear, but developing a team and developing a strategy so that way, as time and as the ministry evolves, there is a strategy to incorporate different tools and equipment to make sure that the sound is adequate, such as microphones when the pastor is recording a video. The pastor or whoever is recording the video needs to wear a mic. That's critically important. So yes, sound is important. Another question. Every Sunday we get squeals and noise. How do we stop it? Okay, first let's address what that is. In most cases, those squeals and that noise is from feedback, and that's the loud sound that comes when, in many cases, mics are too close to the microphones, or if the volume on the soundboard is too high for that microphone, then you'll get an echo or you'll get feedback and it makes it uncomfortable to hear. So one is make sure that mics aren't too close to a monitor or a speaker. Also, you may have to turn down the volume and employ the services of a sound professional or a high level volunteer to make sure that something that's called the gain or the volume or how much is coming into the mic is not too high. So definitely, to help with feedback, the first place to start, making sure that the mics aren't too close to monitors, and also make sure that the microphones are equalized correctly. You may hear the term EQ, but making sure that they are set properly. And setting mics properly does not happen on a Sunday morning. I'll say that again. Making sure that mics are set, and when I say set, meaning the volume, the settings of how high a person's voice is or low a person's voice is not intended for Sunday morning. That is intended for what we call a tech day, or in many cases, you may hear the term ringing out microphones. That's when on a day during the week, during a rehearsal for musicians and singers, that's when the sound team or the media team comes in, and this could be once a quarter, not very often, but occasionally coming in to make sure that everyone who uses a mic has a certain setting, and that even includes the pastor. So when a pastor has challenges with their microphone in terms of how they hear and what experience they have at the pulpit, what in many cases from what comes out of their monitors, can be alleviated by an opportunity during the week on a Saturday for the team to come in and make sure that the mic levels are good. So those are some ways to help alleviate feedback and making sure that there's an optimal hearing and sound experience in the worship experience. Sound checks are still critical, but that's again to check the sound, not to fix the sound. So oftentimes there are questions or concerns about how sound is or how it is heard online. The question always comes up, our live stream audio sounds bad. It sounds great in the sanctuary, but online it sounds really bad. How do we fix it? So the first thing that you have to do with sound online is understand that how sound is set in a worship space is different from how it's set for what people hear on a computer or on an iPad or on their smart TV. How is it different? I'm glad you asked. In the sanctuary, if I'm sitting in the pew and I'm listening to the sound and listening to the worship experience, I'm not going to hear a slight buzz or a click that's in the system as much as if I were watching on my computer, because on my computer, I hear every single sound. So it requires a little bit more intentionality about making sure that when certain mics aren't used, that they're muted, because when they're not used, sometimes they do carry a buzz or a hum. So if you're streaming online and you just have one soundboard, make sure that whatever is not used, that is muted, and only let things that are being used currently be unmuted on the board. That's on a basic level. Now, ideally is do what's called create separate settings on your soundboard. And if you're not on the media team and you're listening to this, and if you're hearing issues with how sound is online, tell the media team or get with your sound engineer, how can we create separate settings for what happens online and what happens in the house, so that way they can be set differently and managed in a different space, so that way whoever is doing sound can hear what's happening online that's different from in the worship space. Also, plug mics directly into the mixer. What that means is many times you may watch a service online and you're hearing a lot of sounds in the room that interfere with how well you hear. Well, what's happening is their mics are capturing, there are mics that are getting the sound directly from the person who's speaking, but they're getting it from just the room in general. So the goal is everything that's going to be heard online needs as much as possible to be directly mic'd, not only from what people hear, but also from the instruments that are played. If there's an opportunity, as your ministry is growing, if your instruments aren't mic'd, then over time, make sure that the drums have their own mics, making sure that the piano or the keyboard is directly connected. So that way it provides more of a comfortable experience. So that way you're not hearing unnecessarily what's happening in the audience. And also take the time, even before those changes, testing the live stream, because it may not be anything related to your sound system. It may be the tool that's used for streaming. All too often, our ministries don't, before every Sunday going live, taking the time to do a test stream. Go live, put up a slide so when people see it online, they'll know that you're testing or make it private so that people don't see, because it may be the computer that might be causing the sound to be bad. So using those opportunities to help with making sure that sound is adequate. Another question: we don't have many volunteers. How can we get more volunteers and keep them to help us with our media team? So here's how you can do that. Certainly invite more people to help through announcements, making sure that it's communicated clearly. Hey, we're looking for volunteers. We need more help on our team, and train them. You can employ the services of a professional person to train them, so that way the reason why they're not volunteering is because it appears too technical, or they're frustrated, or when something doesn't work, then they don't feel supported. Make sure that you train the volunteers and thank them often. Not only thank them often, and make sure that they feel appreciated for the work that they do, because I consider the media team to be first responders in ministry. They are on the front lines to make sure that ministry happens every single week. So thank them, appreciate them, and rotate the people who serve, so that way they're not serving every single week, but they serve as needed, or there is a rotation, so there's no sense of burnout to those who are supporting. So that's one way to not only gain volunteers, but also to retain them as well. We can't afford, another question, we can't afford to buy everything new. What should we upgrade first? And often the question becomes, we need sound, we need upgrades to cameras, and we need lighting. So what should we do first out of all of those? So definitely a priority should be sound. I'm a believer you can have a bad camera or bad lighting, but how people hear plays a big role. And this is why. Not just in the sanctuary, but you have people who are watching worship services online, no matter the size of your church. In many cases, when they're watching at home, and this has been proven by research, most of the time they're not sitting directly in front of their device, their smart TV, their iPad or computer the entire time. Many cases, they're multitasking. So if they're multitasking and they're washing clothes or cooking dinner while the broadcast is going on, that means they need to be able to hear well, even if they're not watching. So start off with quality sound and be intentional about the sound. And then from there, based on the dynamics of the room, can be entertained whether you go forth with lighting or cameras. Lighting is critical. You can have not the best camera, and if the lighting is good, likewise, you can have the best camera and bad lighting, then you're not getting the best quality out of it. So making sure that the lighting is adequate. One of the benefits of the work of techno-evangelism, as I call it, is supporting all kinds of churches and ministries who have worship in many spaces. And so the question arose, well, we meet in a gym and the sound is echoey. How can we fix that? So here's some ways to do that. So you can be intentional about where you point and what direction you point your mics. In many cases, you might want to point them straight towards the audience, as far as speakers rather, to make sure that it's going directly to those who are listening. Also, you can add things like to help absorb the sound. You can add rugs or curtains or things that have certain material to them to help absorb the sound, to help in that way. And also, if you have a volunteer team, you may have to spend a little bit more time, since you're setting up each week, to test the sound to see how it sounds each week, because since the equipment is not stationary. So a question arose recently that I received about rehearsals and how can rehearsals help with sound. So again, rehearsals gives you opportunity to work together and have a sense of confidence around what happens on Sunday. Also, rehearsals help with, if you're incorporating lyrics on the screen, that allows them to test those lyrics, make sure that they're grammatically correct, make sure that they have a pulse as to what they're going to sing, so that that way they can stay on rhythm with the words as the choir or praise team is singing for Sunday morning, have an opportunity to do that prior to Sunday morning. So rehearsals help with that. And that's kind of like your regular tech check in addition to the one that you might do every quarter. Right? So for many churches, they are in the process of some kind of renovation, and they are overhauling the space, overhauling the equipment, and they want to know, and the question arose is, how can we prepare sound and prepare the future of what sound is in our ministry? How can we future proof what we do as we're upgrading? So make sure that as you're using an AV installer and you meet with a company to help with your technology as far as any type of installations, ask the question, will this equipment help us 10 years or 5 years from now? And if not, what can we do to future proof what we do? So creating a budget for 5 years down the line will help to make sure that sound is better in the future, because equipment changes, things have to be upgraded. Even if you maintain the same things, then you might have to upgrade it at some point. Another thing is develop a relationship with a ministry that's larger than yours. And that will help for you to see their future, or where they are, where you might want to go, and what you might need to acquire as a part of your ministry's media for the future in order to prepare ahead of time. And a question that I get all the time about the pastor's mic. Well, how can we make sure that the pastor's mic sounds good every week? Well, it's an easy question and an easy answer. Make sure that the pastor gets the same mic every week. So that way the settings are the same. No one else should, as much as possible, based on, I know everyone's budget is different, but as much as possible, make sure that the pastor gets the same mic. And if you're using a praise team or have a praise team and who sings regularly, make sure as much as possible they get the same mic as well. So making sure, and then test that regularly. Make sure that the pastor's mic is tested regularly. A few more questions. One that I received as far as how can we make sure that the music is not too loud for when the music or when the musicians play and when the choir sings. So one way that can be enhanced is making sure during the sound check that the volume for each of the mics are set properly. You always want to make sure that the music is under the singers and not above it. Also, headphones still play a role in how music is heard during rehearsals and on Sunday morning. Using headphones to listen to the music during those times is helpful as well. And my last question is, how can we make sure that the sound is consistent weekly? So making sure that the sound, or making sure that the broadcast, the lighting, the video is consistent, is making sure as much as possible that the team is consistent. And that if there are any changes that happen during the week, that those are communicated adequately to whoever has to operate on Sunday to make sure that there aren't any surprises to what happens on Sunday morning. Also, make sure that equipment is powered down and that equipment is turned on every single time that is used as much as possible. I know many cases the sound of the audio console, the soundboard stays on, but regularly, just like with a laptop, 90% of the issues that we encounter are resolved by restarting the computer. So if the soundboard or the cameras are restarted, then that should be the first place that you should start with, making sure that technology issues are resolved. So with that being said, my friends, if you have a technology question, please feel free to submit it at farmertechgroup.com. And I look forward to sharing more opportunities for technology growth and enhancement in upcoming weeks. God bless you.